Let's talk about creating safe spaces in Castro.
Did somebody say recovery?
Let's talk about meetings, sex and recovery.
Sober sex? Did somebody say dick?
Let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about... Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues with Bonnie Violet
and Lulu.
Each week, we will provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversation around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for people, more people in recovery.
By tackling topics used to separate us.
So before we do that, please like, comment, and share this episode.
Share it now. Just do it.
How are you doing?
I am pretty good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm aside from we had a nice little break, and we're in our sophomore year. Oh my God, it's like some shows don't make it past, but aside from a little bit of a false start last week, I'm really happy to be back.
Yeah, me too. It's been too long.
Things are a little different now, huh?
Yes, they are. There's a bit of like a delay or something.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's like I think it's probably a good idea that we not look at any kind of like feeds because the delay will get us. So yeah, what have you what have you been up to during our little break, huh?
Yeah, what haven't I been up to? I've been kind of on a little tour of like the East Coast from like Baltimore to Richmond, Virginia to New York City. And now I'm back in LA right now, actually today. Just kind of traveling around, meeting people. I've met lots of really great people in recovery that I'm excited to hopefully have on the show at some point this season. It's been really great. How about you? How have you been?
I was going to ask you, what are some of the highlights?
The highlights. Well, I really loved getting to go to New York and going to a trans recovery meeting. There was 35 trans people in a recovery meeting. That was really cool. I'd never been to New York before. Well, I'd been to New York once before, but not really enough to like check out the sites. And so it was cool to go to like Stonewall and Christopher Park and the piers and all of that sort of stuff. It was just kind of nice to be there. I've read so much and seen so much about it, so it was nice to actually be there in person.
Absolutely, yeah. No, for me, honestly, it's like I've just been trying to get back into the groove of like in-person meetings and working with sponsees. Like since we last connected, I took on a few more sponsees. I always joke and say that you can tell just how crazy I am when based on how many sponsees I have at different times. I love for the process to be organic. It's like I don't like sometimes they say you should actively go out and look, and I know they did that in but me the last two I kind of had them approach me and we were able to have a conversation and it was organic and we're like, okay, yeah, let's do this and it's been really kind of nice. It's been nice because I think without knowing sometimes it's like having sponsees or having folks who kind of you can connect with like that, they shine a light on like the things that you get to work on yourself,
Yeah, definitely. When you brought that up, I know that my recovery looks best when I'm not feeling great about things, like I'm going to meetings more, I'm talking more, that sort of stuff. So when you said, you can tell I'm really crazy when I'm getting more sponsees and stuff, I totally related to that because they're hearing you speak in meetings and they're seeing you and all that sort of stuff. And they're like, gosh, I want some of that.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's like, what's been really nice. I mean, like I could do better with my meetings. And so I was talking to a sponsee earlier today. And one of the things I suggest all the time, there's only so many things I can say. Reach out, connect, go to meetings. I swear I could hear my voice and the sponsee's voice says, "I've only been going to meeting," and I'm all, "Oh yeah, maybe maybe before I give you a suggestion that I need to take myself." Yeah. So it's
Yes, for
like
sure.
one of the things that we talked about like last go round, the last season, we want everybody to know that, talk about, even though we're in recovery, there are so many different ways to approach recovery, and we are not ambassadors for recovery. We are simply giving you our perspective and showing you how, how we can vibe to the things that we're talking about. So, regardless, I want you to feel like, if you want to chime in, it's like we have all of these methods so you can correct us, correct
Yes,
us. That Yeah. So
definitely.
it's like, we were trying to think of what do we want to talk about for this first episode, and something that comes up a lot, and we could probably talk about it for a whole season, is shame.
Mm,
What is
right?
what does shame what does shame mean to you, Bonnie?
Oh, I know. I mean, there's just so much like shame to go around, you know? You know,
Absolutely.
obviously, there's, a lot of, I think for me, a lot of the getting sober was, a lot of me, the part of me getting sober and staying sober was addressing a lot of the shame. But just because I got sober and I did the steps and that sort of thing doesn't necessarily, I don't, like I don't develop shame still. Like we were talking about that a little bit before the show. Like I recently, last week, we had like a little hiccup, but I also was under quarantine because of COVID. I had been exposed when I was in Brooklyn, and I kind of went through that moment of like, oh my God, I don't want to tell I don't want to tell, I want to tell everyone that I was around that I was exposed, but I also was like, I don't want to go, I don't want to go through this. And I don't know if there was like embarrassment or more inconvenience, but it kind of like, I think there was a little bit of shame. I think I kind of felt that maybe because I'm traveling so much and things like that, maybe I'm not being responsible or whatever. And so I think there was some shame around that for me that came up for a minute.
Absolutely. So you know what? So my sponsor and I, we've been reading Brene Brown, and I'm relying on her heavily today because I was ashamed and thinking I don't know that much about it, but that's absolutely not true. I know a ton about it. I was thinking about like I was fortunate enough, and I always say anybody who knew me when I first came into recovery knew that I needed to be here. But so many people don't want to, you know, reveal that they're in recovery for because of the shame. Because one of the things she says that okay, so shame is fear of losing connection, and I think that
Mm,
that applies appropriately to our to how recovery, because the opposite of addiction is inaction, and I think
yeah.
shame puts us in a place where I'm afraid that I'm not enough, I'm not this, and you're going to find out. And so I'm doing everything I possibly can, or hiding or whatever, so that
Hmm.
you don't know that I'm not perfect. And um, one of the things I think, I don't know about you, but I think that I try to work through with my recovery is getting to this place where I'm okay with the idea that I'm not perfect. And like you said, you kind of alluded to said earlier, like I've done the steps, I've done this and whatever. It doesn't mean that shame goes away. It shows up
Hmm.
in different. It shows up maybe in a different way. Like I was thinking about like, and I'll relate it to my sexuality. Around 99, let's see, 98 or whatever. That's when I started, like, I say I had a year of sneaking around, where I was starting to have these feelings about, that I was a little different, and I was starting having feelings about like same sex. And so my actions, I was sneaking around. Like one of the things I would do, I lived in Mountain View, California at the time, and there was this main street, El Camino, which goes through, oddly enough, it goes through every city. And so there was this adult bookstore that was there, and it was right like where everyone could see, or in my mind, everyone could see. So I assumed that because I was really self-centered, that everybody was paying attention to all my actions. So I would drive and park a couple blocks away, and I would look around to see if any cars were coming. If no cars were coming, then I would go into the front door. Once I was in, I was completely fine, and I could just experience what was going on behind the doors in that adult bookstore in the little rooms, and then I'd sneak out the back and whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that was because I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want anybody to know that I was questioning this. This was something that was uncomfortable. Like the only time it would show up in my life is when I was drunk and acting out. And yeah, so I don't know that for me, when I think about that shame, it's like that definitely was like it wasn't the beginning, but it's an area in my life where shame stands out, and it really kind of had me paralyzed.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me when I think of like the first thing I was kind of felt shame for was like I hate to say it, but for me, I think my father was he dealt drugs when I was younger, and he did drugs and he partied, and I was like not about that life. It's been a long life since then, but I had a very negative opinion about drugs, and I was also afraid that like everyone at school would find out and I would be embarrassed, and like so I remember, and that really dictated a lot of like my behavior and how I hung out with people, and it's amazing how much shame can like impact like our behaviors and how we talk about people, what we talk about people, kind of our comfort around one another as well.
Exactly. Um, I I think that we have that in common because my father, like he's currently in recovery now, and I remember like I could like it was in my mind it was the darkest times, and I just didn't want family, friends, anyone to know what was going on, and it always seemed like everywhere I was, especially with friends, my father would pop up. And
Right?
and at the time, I didn't realize this wasn't about me. This was about him, you
Yeah.
know. But it's hard to when you don't have the proper tools to realize that it just is. I mean, nobody's perfect, obviously. And I was reading today and daring greatly with my sponsor. We were talking about shame, and we were talking about how shame. Like, what was the situation? A man was talking about how his family, like, they only want to see him up on his white horse. And it's interesting. We both picked apart the fact that it was a white horse was this idea of heroics or whatever, but that's another story altogether. But that point when you realize that your parents are human and
Mm,
fall off the pedestal, and we never think about on the opposite side what people who depend on us, when they look up to us or
mm,
whatever, that creates issues.
yeah.
If somebody is expecting me to be perfect, then I'm going to try to be perfect, even though perfection is not something I can do.
Yep.
And the fact that I'm always going to fall short is going to create problems. And so,
Hmm.
so shame is just it rears its ugly head. It's like I was reading too, and I was trying to think about like, okay, so she says in understanding untangling shame, guilt, humiliation, embarrassment. As we work to understand shame, one of the simpler reasons that shame is so difficult to talk about is vocabulary. We often use the terms embarrassment, guilt, humiliation, and shame interchangeably. And
Mm,
I think sometimes, like she was talking about it as extremes, and like the embarrassment part is probably the least of it. Like, because when you're in a situation and you're embarrassed and you put yourself at whatever, sometimes you can kind of laugh it off or whatever. But the others, as far as guilt and humiliation, one of the things I learned, I don't know about you, well, we all do. It's like guilt and shame are just um, they're useless
they're
emotion.
right, right. They're the devil, as some
Yeah,
people would say.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's not anything that our higher power puts on us. Like, that's the stuff that, for me, gets in between me and my relationship with my higher power, and ultimately my relationship with you. So that to me is not something that, God or higher power gives me. That's something that, the world or, the anti-God, if you will, um, is putting on me.
Yeah, I think too, like, and to go back to early recovery, there's not a person. I was reading. There's not a person on the planet that's better than anyone else, and that's from Deborah. Hi, Deborah. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. And
Yes.
that's true. And that's true. But I think the problem is, as like for me, what I try to pay attention to is if I'm going through things, if I'm struggling, then maybe other people might be doing the same thing too. And
Mm-hmm.
when I'm in my moods, when I'm feeling myself, and this is where ego comes in, it's like, that idea that either I'm too good or I'm not good enough, where there's no kind of balance, where I'm only thinking about myself. If I'm only thinking about myself and not taking into consideration other people are not really, most of the time, not really thinking about me at all. But
Right, right.
I am the center of my world. And obviously people are paying attention to me. But like one of the things I struggle with, early recovery. Okay, so I didn't have a job, and I didn't have money, and I couldn't do things, and I going out and what have you, and I didn't want people to know that I didn't have access to things, and and thank Facebook is a blessing and a curse all at the same time, because it shows you all the wonderful fun things that people get
Mm,
with money or whatever. Although they don't pay attention to the fact that a lot of times we stage our pictures. we pre-
right.
so that we present to you what we want you to see. Yeah, but
Hmm. Well, and I think, I think sometimes shame is something that we potentially could work to our advantage as well. I think just like, fear does, or anger, or other kind of emotions or experiences that we have, if we, like, for me, if I start to feel shame about something, to me that's kind of like a trigger. Like that's kind of a that there's something not right with me. And for me, typically that means I'm probably not confident in my behavior or confident in what it is that I'm doing. And that's either because I'm not so sure about it, or maybe I'm not talking to other people about it, that it's some sort of a secret, or oftentimes I think it is just I'm afraid of how it's going to, like you said earlier, how it's going to impact my relationships.
absolutely. And I think that that was, you know, shame. Another thing that Brene talks about is shame likes to stay hidden in the dark, like as
Mm,
far as secrets go. Because if I don't talk to anyone about what I'm going through or whatever, then this bad place between my ears can create all this narrative about what's going on. Like you were talking about, and I asked you a question earlier before we started about your hair, and
mm-hmm,
I think that if we're not careful with, we can keep what other people, what we think others might think about us, from doing the things that we need to do. And shame can keep us
right.
from kind of really kind of rising to the places that we need to be, because we're so caught up in, well, what is this person going to think if I'm dating this person, or what is this person going to
Right.
think if I wear this shirt or whatever. It's like a friend of mine was like, so are you going to get a new swimsuit for P-Town, because I'm going to go next week? And I'm like thinking, I'm not going to be wearing no. And the reality, like I said, is like, I mean, maybe there will be some people looking at me and judging me, or maybe there'll be some people looking at me and judging me favorably. That would be
Hmm.
hot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I had something that was on the tip of my brain. Billy says shame dies in the sunlight of connection.
Exactly, exactly. I think that, a lot of programs that I've been involved with, they say when you have trusted support, when you have your tribe of people, when you have someone that you can go to and tell them the truth, that you can talk openly and honestly about what you're feeling, and find and most times you find out that you are not alone in that. But when you have those folks who, obviously they don't blow smoke up your ass, because you don't need somebody who's just gonna tell you what you want to hear, but having somebody who you trust or whatever, who can kind of reassure you and help you understand that these are just things that we feel.
Hmm.
Shame doesn't really have a chance if uh if you don't stay like locked away and hidden away. Just like I said, it's um the sunlight of connection. That is so eloquent.
Right. It definitely is. Well, and one of the things that I was thinking is sometimes, and this just came to mind when you brought up my hair, and like I have paranoia. I have hair issues where I like freak out because my hair is thinning, and I got extensions in my hair, and I was concerned that you could see the tracks or whatever. And so I think part of that also was not necessarily that. Um, it was easy for me to say put it on other people, but I think some of the truth is that I wasn't happy with it. You know, like I wasn't, like I had my own questions about it, or I wasn't as comfortable with it. And that is really, I think, more of what to work on, or more to like spend time with, than this like falsehood that of being concerned of what other people think.
Absolutely. Well, I always think, like, for me, like, when I was growing up, and I think this is before you realize that, like, other people can affect you in the way that they can. I I guess I used to care deeply about what other people thought, and then I got to a place where I started finding my voice, and I would
Mm,
verbalize as much as I could that I did not care what anybody thought, when in fact I completely cared and
mm,
controlled. And I guess where I'm going and what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to be open and honest about the fact that I do care. That's the truth.
mm-hmm.
I care, but I can't let it dictate how I do things. And I think
Right.
that that's for me is a healthier place to be. That, yeah, I purposely won't try to dress my age because I don't want somebody to judge me thinking like I'm trying to dress too provocatively or this. Um, but it's helpful a little. It's helpful a little. It's like I obviously don't want to be limited to what I don't want to be put in a box. But unfortunately, and this is the challenge that we have. Um, like fear, shame can like paralyze. It can keep you from moving forward. And even if you have these amazing folks in your life telling you to the contrary, what you think, like it's not until you're open and able to kind of hear it that you
Mm-hmm.
can appreciate. And I guess it would seem to me like it's just an ongoing practice.
Mm.
Like I'm constantly, yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
was just, uh-huh.
So it just seems like it would be an ongoing practice to kind of try to stay connected, try to stay in the sunlight of connection and not drift away. Like I was talking to a sponsor earlier today, and we were talking about the types of things like I believe that there are all of these safeguards that I like to put into place that keeps me safe from my next drink or drug. And it's like meetings, connection, working with the sponsor, the basics like brushing my teeth, waking up, getting enough sleep, drinking water, all of these things that I put into place. And as soon as I see me letting go of these things, slowly but surely, the process is it. And I usually have an opportunity and I have a chance to kind of turn it around. And like
Mm-hmm.
with and I think that I've been really fortunate because like as I haven't because I'm in a good place with my recovery now, I haven't allowed that shame to kind of
Mm.
throw me off my game, if you will. Like
Yeah.
it's a little more subtle. It's not as obvious because before it was like really obvious. But like when I moved to my new place, okay, the first thing I saw when I went to look at it, I was like looking at the outside of the building. It's in a great location. It's like right on Market Street in at Castro, like DuBose Triangle. If you're not from here, that's a nice place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I looked at the color of the building and I'm all, oh my God, people are going to like whatever. And sometimes when I go in, I'm all thinking, these people are like, what? They don't care. And some
Mm-hmm.
people don't care because it's like, I mean, and all I need to pay attention to is I live by myself in the Castro and reg- doesn't matter what the color of the building is. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I like my space. But I was so caught up and worried about what people were going to think about the color of the building. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, and still do some ways. It's like, hell, hell, I was concerned about like that we have some neighbors downstairs who are participating in some unsavory things. That's the best way to call it. And I am not like all like above that because I've lived in places and scenarios and situations, and sometimes I was the unsavory one in the building.
Mm.
And
Right.
I'm still concerned like about what people are gonna think about who lives downstairs. I'm all like, that really matters.
Right. One of the things that I was, well, we can do this, read this real quick.
I know. Go
Deborah
ahead.
says, I feel like shame is such a self-centered emotion. As you
Mhm.
said, worrying about what others think. Do I sit and think about what someone else is doing? No. I'm sure no one is thinking that much about me, simply put. And if they are, then something might be wrong with them.
I know, exactly. It's like, I think obviously, there are going to be some people who are worried about what you think, but just like Deborah said, is like, if you're so concerned about what's going on with me, then that's your shit and you need to work on that. And
Mm-hmm.
it applies for me. If I'm so caught up with you thinking that you're thinking about me, I got some problems and I
Yeah.
need to work through them. I absolutely need to work through them. And I think that, like you had said, it's like it's a gift sometimes, like when you're working on being a better version of yourself or whatever, and you finally are get some awareness around the fact that you've been obsessing over what other people think, as a just instead of
Mm-hmm.
just doing that. This is something that you definitely get to work on, especially if you're in therapy. It's like, I don't know if you've ever experienced therapy where you go. I used to dread it because I go in and think I don't have anything to talk about, when in fact I have so much to talk about. I have to take
Yeah.
notes through and say, oh yeah, this is something I could talk about.
Yeah. That's usually the time you have the most to say, right? One of the things, one of the things that I noticed, that's kind of related to what you were talking about is, I used to be a lot, and I do still care about what people think in some areas of my life still. But I noticed that once I kind of, stopped talking about other people and judging other people, I was able to stop putting that on myself as well. Like I noticed when I wasn't, I never thought of myself as a judgmental person, but I realized that I had been judging people, whether I was saying it to them or not. And once I could get to a space where I wasn't judging them, then I also wasn't judging myself,
That's
and I, I was really shocked, I think, by that when that happened. And it was like, like a lot of change. It happens progressively, and then all of a sudden it just feels like a huge shift. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I just think so differently. And there was just so much more serenity experienced, once I was able to kind of stop talking shit and throwing shit and talking not well. The less I do that, the better I feel about myself in the world.
and surrounding yourself with people who do that, because like
Hmm.
it takes a little while, because it's like I loved it. I lived off of that stuff. I lived off of the gossip and the character assassination or whatever. And it was a part in my mind, it was a part of who I was, which is not true or whatever,
Hmm.
but I was holding on to it desperately. And I think that over time and I think continued sobriety and continue practicing, becoming better
Hmm.
versions of myself, realizing that, certain toxic behavior was not okay. And, even down to, and I was thinking about this, so Oprah had the OWN network, and the OWN network was not doing as well or whatever. It was doing well with some people, but that's because it was so focused on positivity and uplifting and what have you. And I don't I've talked to sponsors about it. I've talked to other people. It's like, what would it look like if my life was a little more rosier, if I lived a certain way or whatever? And uh, I thrived so long on drama and nonsense and
Hmm.
stuff that was not healthy for me. Kind of when they talk about this idea of being restored to sanity, I was thinking, like with the drugs and alcohol, I was leaning on the things that were working to kill me, working to take me out, and not
Hmm.
paying attention to, not able to see that the good things, these things are helping me be a better version of myself. So it's like, I, I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. But no, it was on a line about like really kind of like I'll go back to the OWN network. It was positive, and I was caught up in the drama, and back to the gossip and the character assassination and the
Hmm.
one of the things I do every day in my gratitude list is, and I talked about it before, I include my intentions, setting my intention, and I want to be kind, and I
Hmm.
want to have acceptance and humility and appreciation. I think that was the other. Let's
Right.
say independence. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think as queer folks, and you might relate to this, but I think a lot of the times, like the cattiness, the able to get back and to read one another, like that sort of like personality and banter is almost kind of like it's expected and it's like socially acceptable and kind of being queer. And so, and for me, I think my drinking got way out of hand and nothing was said or done for a while because it was socially acceptable for me to be a gay person, a gay man at that time, who was sloppy drunk at the bar on the weekend. Like that was kind of like a social norm, and it was an acceptable kind of situation. Now, if I was smoking meth, it was a little bit different situation. So I was able to quit the drugs, but then the alcohol, because it was socially acceptable. And then I just noticed there was so much more, to unpack once I removed the drinking, that there were a lot of other kind of characteristics or traits, if you will, that I thought we had as queer people in order to be like valid,
Mhm.
I guess, to live into that identity properly, I guess.
Exactly. It's like, I think you were so right on. It's like participating in all that cattiness or whatever, feeling like I wanted to be a part of. And so the only way to be a part of is just to
Mm-hmm.
be there. And I remember talking to one of our fellows, Charles M., because I was struggling with this idea. Like I would hear, we want to let go of these things, we want to let go of those things. I think number one, it's like you let go of the things that no longer serve you in the time
Mm-hmm.
that you do it, not
Yep.
when just somebody says you do it. So what I did was he suggested that I find my group of people, my tribe or whatever, and this was a roundabout way, a more loving way to kind of really kind of focus in on setting clear boundaries, because
Mm-hmm.
I found that I was acting on this behavior and other people were joining in because my actions weren't suggesting that it wasn't okay, and it was bothering me. And how could I, and but I couldn't say you can't do it when I'm doing it myself. I had to
Mm-hmm.
get to a place where it's like I was not just setting a boundary, but I was living that boundary myself. And it took a little while because it was a number of years, but after a while I was able to, I found uh, that because I was starting to act a certain way, like and think a certain way, I would politely excuse myself from certain situations. Others I would dig my heels in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I think that just like in the bar situations for drinking and using, being in recovery or whatever, it can be without knowing, it can be a little shameful if you're still participating in that behavior.
Right.
I haven't let go of these things that are toxic. Like, uh, I used to get bothered. Like, actually, one of our guests, Dominic, I remember we were sitting on the steps and we were talking about someone, and in our minds, we were talking about this person in a loving way, but that's not the case. It was
Right.
not the and Dominic politely excused himself, and I was thinking, "Oh hell no! How dare you judge us?" And he wasn't judging at all. He just was taking care of himself, and I think uh, that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't know, maybe for folks who are like Al-Anonic or codependent, I think one of the things that I've come to understand more of too is like expectations. Like sometimes I can just expect too much from myself or like from myself, and then that creates shame. And so I think sometimes I have to really check in with myself and be like, is this really something that you need to be like on yourself about, girl? Like,
Mhm.
is it that important? You know what I mean? Because I can tend to like hold myself to this crazy extreme that in a lot of ways has been really helpful in my life. It helped me get good grades. It helped me, make some of the best choices in my life.
Uh-huh.
And it also actually caused me to get sober because I was falling short because my expectations were so high, which was lucky because I definitely could have like gotten to be much worse. So I think I still have to kind of like check myself. And part of that shame inventory, if you will, of checking it out is like, is this a reasonable space to have some sort of shame or to undo something? And that's something that, having a mentor or people like that are close to you in recovery, or maybe even a little bit further ahead of you, can kind of help you discern that, because oftentimes it's hard for me to do that myself. Somebody will be all like, girl, you're like too hard on yourself. Like that's not reasonable.
Yeah, I think that shame can make you afraid of being failing, and I think that what I know to be true is it is in failing and not achieving certain goals and getting back up and getting back on the horse as you will is what creates character. And to find yourself in a situation where you're so fearful of not looking good and not
Mm,
saving face that you don't take any risks, that you don't take any chances. And I feel like um, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, comfort has been an enemy.
Mm.
Especially early. I couldn't just rest on my laurels. I was like, I did a bunch of resting. Now, because I needed to be on. Not that I needed to kind of lose my mind in what I was doing, but I couldn't just sit back and not make attempts at getting better, being better, finding out, what it is that makes me tick and really kind of like riding it to the sunset.
Mhm. Angel has a great question. Angel says, "What comes from embracing shame and not taking yourself so seriously? What do we have to gain?"
Well, yeah, I know exactly. It's like, we want to be careful, because I think that I don't know that we want to embrace shame. Uh, Maybe like acceptance around who we are. I
Well, I
mean,
think You well, and I think maybe the way that embrace makes sense is because sometimes shame comes,
yeah,
sometimes things come that we maybe didn't want. Sometimes that person we didn't invite to the party or would
uh-huh,
rather them not show up, they show up. And we
yeah, exactly.
still we still give them a hug and we're kind to them and we greet them. You know what I mean? And so I think that's partially, I think, of the way of like, let's embrace the shame. We didn't invite this. We're not gonna like party with you. You know what I mean? And so I think that could be like a way of kind of embracing it, just to acknowledge it,
Absolutely.
because
Kind of,
sometimes that can spiral.
yeah, exactly. Kind of honor it and not judge it so harshly. Maybe not judging
Hmm.
the shame that we've experienced and not letting it kind of take hold of us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
and
take it so seriously.
yeah. No, it would be nice. And Angel, you're right. It would be so nice if we could like and this is where the humiliation or the embarrassment piece comes in. If we find ourselves in a situation where we're humiliated or embarrassed or whatever, not get so caught up in like again what other people think. You
Hmm.
know, like like this exercise I like to do is I try to play it out. I think about like what is the worst case scenario? What does this mean? What does this look like? Like is this the end of the world? Is this a life-threatening situation? Am I going to die as a result of this? and if and if that's not the case, then I can like start over. Yeah,
Yeah, and most of the time it's not, right?
yeah. Most of the time it's not, but it feels like it. I mean, it's like sometimes we addicts, alcoholics, and I believe maybe even people who are codependent don't know the
Hmm.
difference between a bad day and the end of the world.
Hmm.
And the truth of it is that it just is what it is.
Yeah. And just as like kind of in summary, I know we've kind of talked around it or whatever, but maybe talking about like, so how do we rid shame or how do we address shame? I think we have said that in a number of ways, but it might make sense for us just to kind of like answer it again now. Like, so how is it that we eliminate shame, if you will, or work to erase shame's impact on our life?
Well, what do you do? Because it's um,
I,
like go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is to talk about it and
Yeah,
acknowledge it. Like the we're only as sick as our secrets. If there's some sort of shame going on, I'm probably not talking about something. So
yeah,
I need to talk with a mentor or a sponsor or a therapist or again somebody who's kind of gets me in that way, so that I can just work it all out. I can flesh it all out. They can tell me this is an unreasonable thing or this is a reasonable thing or like, oh my God, you did what? You know what I mean? Like to get some honest feedback for because again, it's hard to kind of get that out with yourself. It does look like Angel has another question.
yeah. Bring it to the sunlight. I did it. Oh, I like that. Invite those thoughts and show them the way out. I told the sponsor, those don't belong to you anymore. You need to give them back to the universe.
Mm,
Brene Brown, and I'm invoking her name again. She talks about the four elements of shame resilience, and one is recognizing shame and understanding its triggers, things that shame you. Like if
mhm,
you're around, like one example, if you're around people that bring out those things in you, maybe you can change your environment,
yep,
or just be aware of that. Other is practicing critical awareness. You can reality check the messages and expectations that are driving your shame.
yep,
Trying to the other is reaching out, like you said, reaching out to someone that you trust. Not everyone is going to be able. Not everyone is going to be able to kind of help you with that, and figuring out who those people are, those mentors, those people in your life that you respect, who are going to tell you the truth and not blow smoke up your ass, because you need to hear the truth. It's like the last thing I need to do is to go polling and looking for somebody who's going to tell me what I want to hear, because that's not going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
It may calm me in the moment, but it's like, and the other is speaking the shame, talking about it, open your mouth and talking about it. It's like, I think that like one of the gifts of recovery in the program that I'm learning is that the things that I thought were the darkest and the worst parts of me have turned out to be the best assets when it comes to being supportive and helping someone else. So those are,
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things, so Deborah says, exactly, only as sick as your secrets, and talking to someone who will tell you it's not reasonable for you to feel shame for being who you are. And I think that's the other thing that we have to really kind of be mindful of when we're dealing with shame. We might have shame about a behavior, about something that we did, but we ourselves are nothing that needs to be shameful. You know what I mean? Like it's about the behavior, it's about what we're doing. It doesn't go against our value as a person. We aren't bad, or we aren't full of shame. It's, you know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
important to kind of,
You aren't bad unless you want to be.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah.
so we're at the 5-minute mark, so we can start like telling them all the wonderful things that we're doing.
Yeah, we
Mine,
should.
mine is very, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, mine is very simple. It's like you can always reach me at Louie86 on Instagram. I'm finally realizing that I need to do more than just take fun pictures. I can post and let people know the kind of what's going on in my life and all that good stuff. But I turn it over to you because, like, as much as I've got going, you are traveling, doing your thing, and living.
I am living. I'm super blessed right now. But if folks want to follow my work, you can check out A Queer Chaplain. You can search on Google, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and you can, check out my work. I love talking about spiritual shit with people thought to not have spirituality. So drag artists and trans folks and people in recovery. And so if you want to hear more stories, yeah, come check it out. So a queer chaplain, or yeah, I think that's a good place to find me.
I love. And I think that also it's like this is a great place to say it's like if you ever want to participate and join us on the podcast and participate in one of these conversations, we look forward to that. But it is important to note that the Castro Country Club is a clean and sober space. Uh, Sorry. It's a clean, sober space, all people and home for queer recovery community located in the heart of the Castro district of San Francisco. We endeavor to be a space where all can seek wisdom, serenity, courage, and joy. And you can find more information at castrocountryclub.org. I had a slow start there. Oops.
No problem. And to send us a voice message, in this voice message, you could be asking a question, you could be giving us a topic, you could just be making a comment. We listen to those voicemails as they come in, and we can use them as a tool for future conversations. So please do check out our pipe. That is our speak pipe. The link is in the description as well as on the screen. Check it out and leave us a voice message. We'd love to hear from you.
Exactly. And please tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m., even if the invite says 3.
I know that's so weird. The Facebook was like giving me some crap.
Yeah, it's like, so we go live in Castro Country Club on the Facebook channels and the YouTube channels, so you can catch us there. And go
Yep,
ahead.
and if you want to listen, you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, whatever. This, as we said in the beginning, this is our second season, so we had a whole season of stuff before this. So if you're curious to hear more about what we've talked about in the past, just search for at the CCC wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yes, and email us also at podcast@countryclub.org. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow, and most important, let's share this
Yes,
episode.
share it, and we'll see you all next week.
Yes,
All
wonderful.
right, take
Thank you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.